Let's explore the secret truth behind no self meditation. This morning's lesson is drawn from a good-hearted question found of all places on Reddit. The question begins, so I know we all have ideas and beliefs about ourselves, but what about the beliefs about others? I have beliefs about other, and it is directly related to myself and embarrassment and shame. It totally sucks. Anyone else go through this? So I really applaud the enthusiasm and the earnestness of the individual who wrote this question. But this question infers a great deal of confusion, and that confusion is not the fault of the person asking the question, but rather the fault of the individuals responsible for teaching the individual, either in word or in print. So let's go back to the idea of self. The Buddha did not teach much about the idea of no self. But after studying and practicing Buddhism and philosophy and meditation for more than half my life, I can assure you, no self was always meant to be, meant to be a metaphor. It's not literal, it's a metaphor. And when you look at meditation through the lens of neuroscience, which is an advantage we have that was not available during the Iron Age, it will make perfect sense. And I would like to go to that right now, if that's okay. But first, by way of preface, allow me to quote Sturgeon's Law, or at least refer to it and paraphrase it. Sturgeon's Law, which reminds us that 90% of everything sucks, but not in the fun, tingly way. Let's explore the idea of yin and yang, which is not unique to Taoism. It's also found in ancient Buddhism under the idea of yang being associated with the Buddha's foolish cousin, Devadatta. And whether you call it the path of Devadatta, whether you call it the path of yang or the path of the chimpanzee, the majority of meditation teachers out there think it's a wonderful idea to be rigid, fearful, superstitious, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel. But there will always be a minority who follow the Buddha, who follow yin, who are more like bonobos than psychotic chimpanzees, who feel it's important to be flexible, loving, rational, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind. But what has this to do with meditation? When we are under the thrall of teachers or authors who themselves are under the thrall of being rigid and controlling, they will implore their students or their readers to actively concentrate and to actively analyze. Sadly, the only way we can do that is by relying upon such discrete mechanisms as those found within our medial prefrontal cortex and our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is a wonderful tool if you want to compare or contrast or calculate or reason or edit. This is a wonderful tool. But if we overuse it, there are going to be dilemmas. If we overuse this prefrontal cortex, we're going to stimulate our amygdala, the seat of aggression and anxiety, which will then feed our rigidity and controlling tendencies and kick it up a notch. Now, those are red flags from our body. Our crankiness, our anxiety can be wonderful warning flags that our needs are not being met. Our need for hydration, food, recreation, rest, cat videos, fresh air, sunshine, exercise, what have you. If we ignore our body's needs and just push forward, then there's a very good chance that we could begin presenting with symptoms of depression. Nobody wants that. So I think we can agree that while the prefrontal cortex does a wonderful job at many things, it doesn't do a good job at mindfulness and meditation. Didn't evolve to. That begs the question, what tissues in our central nervous system have evolved to be optimized for mindfulness and meditation? Let's begin with mindfulness. Every time we inhale, whether we know it or not, we access our sympathetic nervous system. Ensconced within the middle third of our spinal cord, this bad boy has evolved to help us perceive vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly, which is the opposite of rigidity. It's the opposite of concentration. It's the opposite of being controlling. So there are tissues in our body to help us plug into yin. So let's talk about this perception thing. We are able to perceive sight, sound, sensations, flavors, scents, and the like. We're also able to perceive emotions, intentions, thoughts, memories, and imaginings. That means there's a good many things to notice, and it could get overwhelming. Fortunately, evolution's got our back. This brings us to meditation, because every time we exhale, whether we know it or not, whether we mean to or not, we access our parasympathetic nervous system. And I think I'm going to do a quick edit. Please bear with me. Well, anyway, let me get on with this. Our parasympathetic nervous system is ensconced within our lower third and our upper third of that same spinal cord. And this parasympathetic nervous system, one moment. This parasympathetic nervous system has evolved to help us both physically relax and mentally release. Now, you might say, dude, I breathe in, I breathe out all the time. I'm not peaceful. Why not? Well, in a word, Urkel. Our brain is such a ridiculous, disorganized Borg circus that it pretty much acts like Urkel, forever bumping into something, creating a catastrophe, and then asking, did I do that? However, there's a simple solution. Every time we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, miraculously, our brain begins cooperating with our sympathetic nervous system. Furthermore, every time we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, this exact same brain begins cooperating with our parasympathetic nervous system, which is wild. It's just that simple. But what has that to do with no self? Well, remember, no self is a figure of speech, and here's how it works. Whenever we relax into our exhalation, whatever we notice during our previous inhalation, including a sense of self, could feel less permanent, could feel less solid, could feel less defining. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever sense of other we might have experienced during our previous inhalation could feel less permanent, could feel less solid, at least momentarily, could feel less defining. But wait, there's more. As we relax into our exhalation, whatever emotion, regardless of how melodramatic or petulant it might be, regardless of how glorious or grotesque it might be. We could be Othello's wife herself, demanding her mate's murder for the sake of career. Whatever impulses or emotions we experienced during our previous inhalation could feel less graspable, less permanent, less defining. How less defining? As if it was not us. Is that permanent? No, nothing's permanent. Everything's fleeting. In our sun, in 5 billion years, will become a supergiant and swallow the earth. Nothing's permanent. With the changing of the seasons, we see the impermanence of a year. With the waxing and the waning of the moon, we see the impermanence of a month. With the rising and the setting of the sun, we see the impermanence of a day. And right now, we can gingerly set our fingertips upon our upper chest. We could feel it swell. We could feel it sink. And viscerally experience the impermanence of breath. Ever-changing one and all, there is nothing permanent to grasp. Change makes of grasping a folly. So no self is just a metaphor for the non-graspability that we can experience to a certain degree for a certain length of time during each exhalation. Let's go back to the opening question. Regardless of what people tell you, we all experience petulant and Shakespearean emotions towards others. We all experience peace. We all experience fear. We all experience rage. We all experience terror. We all experience love. We all experience hate. Who we are is not defined by what we feel, but rather what we do with what we feel. No, Virginia, our job is not to repress our emotions or argue with our emotions or lambaste our emotions. Au contraire, our job is simple. During our in-breath, we notice whatever comes up. We notice it vulnerably, passively, viscerally, randomly, and fleetingly. As we exhale, we physically relax and mentally release as best we can. We do this to the silent and mental and passive soundtrack of this and ease. Allow me to set your mind at ease. There are many myths out there about what enlightenment is and how long it takes to accomplish it. But the Buddha felt that enlightenment was simply mastery of the Eightfold Path. Mastery is a funny word. As a child, I found it difficult to learn to ride a bike or learn to tie my shoes, but eventually I got so good at those two tasks that I could practice them spontaneously, habitually, easily, and effectively. That is what mastery is. And according to the Buddha, in the penultimate passage of the Satipatthana Sutta, it is possible to master this path in less than 7 years, or 7 quarters, or 7 months, or 7 fortnights, or 7 weeks, or even 7 days. this is doable. It doesn't mean you're magic. It doesn't mean you're Obi-Wan Kenobi and can do the Jedi mind trick, although it would be pretty cool if you could. It simply means that you've gotten so good at mindfulness and meditation that love and going with the flow and the wisdom of impermanence become effortless. That doesn't mean we're not going to experience a full spectrum of emotions, but we will be defined by empathy. We might feel like killing someone, but the thought of it kind of makes us sad, and we won't give in to it. It's impossible to act on an impulse when we are relaxing into it. I have a shit ton of neurological challenges, in addition to both ADHD and autism. Those things have been exacerbated for this body by fetal alcohol exposure, birth trauma, brain damage, C, PTSD, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. I have problems. I don't think I pronounced that correctly. And myalgic encephalomyelitis. So there's a lot of things going on. 3 of those things are clinically known to induce meltdowns. Having all 3 means that trying to keep from being a monster has been my life's mission. And it's embarrassing to admit that I have to work so hard not to be a baddie. But I do. I have to work very hard because of the capacity for autistic meltdown and ADHD meltdown and C and post-traumatic meltdown. And so I speak from firsthand experience that noticing rage is different than becoming a slave to rage. There's a difference between noticing rage and having that rage control our choices, utterances, and deeds. All boils down to the mindfulness and meditation, silent and mental recitations of this and ease that are correlated with the phases of breath. Therefore, there's no shame in thinking or feeling thoughts about your sense of self or about others. Buddhist psychology is not about self-talk. It's not about philosophizing. It's about cooperating with our autonomic nervous system to notice and release in a therapeutic and sustainable way, in a visceral way, in a fun way. I shit you not. The 4th enlightenment factor is joy. The 5th enlightenment factor is tranquility. If our practice of mindfulness and meditation is not increasing our joy and tranquility, then in the words of Bugs Bunny, we have taken a wrong turn at Albuquerque. I do look forward to chanting and meditating with you together as a team after approximately 30 seconds of housekeeping. This is Lama Jigme Gyatso of the Buddha Joy Meditation School. For more than 30 years, I've spent about 8 hours a day, almost every day, studying, practicing, mastering, and reverse engineering each school of meditation so that you would not have to. Welcome, my friends, to meditate like a Jedi, which is made possible due to the generosity of viewers just like you. Now, I think it could be great fun. If together as a team, we worked with the latest iteration of the spaciousness of Diamond Mind, composed many centuries ago by Prahit Vajra, translated recently by Yeshe Donden, adapted and amplified by yours truly. Oh, that's the wrong button. Let's try that again. Well, if I remember correctly, that's not going to work real well. So, there. Okay. Please chat with me. All possible... Oopsie, wrong button. Here we go. All possible circumstances and all things in them arise not duly from the pristine continuum. In the purity of divine presence, there are no such distinctions as male or female. So what do we mean by divine presence? That is a metaphor for the teaching of the two truths popularized by the South Indian Buddhist philosopher Nagarjuna. To put it in terms of the four bases of mindfulness, our circumstances are appearing as we breathe in, yet less graspable as we breathe out. Our bodies can be sensual as we breathe in, yet less than graspable as we breathe out. Our relationships could seem resounding as we breathe in, yet less than graspable as we breathe out. Our mind can seem lucid, perceiving, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining as we breathe in, yet that same mind could seem far less graspable as we breathe out. So, ironically, or serendipitously, in harmony with the question that was behind the question in the heart of the person writing today's opening question, all our circumstances, all our fellows, our sense of body, our sense of mind, all arise from emptiness. They're neither good nor bad. They simply are. Some are external, some are internal, some are pleasurable, some are painful, some are interesting, some are boring, some are glorious, some are grotesque. But their mere existence is not an indictment. For in the release, the physical relaxation and the mental release available during each exhalation, everything that is different during our exhalation seems of one taste everything that is quite different during our inhalation smacks of one taste during our exhalation. So together, let us practice. Please chant with me. In the domain of reality, there is no talk of getting somewhere by means of effort. Yet some say that by using the powers of sound, one can generate the bliss of a magical illusion. So you might say, hey, wait a minute, isn't the sixth fold of the Buddha's eightfold path right effort? It is, but what is right effort? Well, if you ask someone who was enthralled with the idea of being rigid, fearful, controlling, elitist, cryptic, competitive, and cruel, then they'll tell you, oh man, you gotta get it out. But if you talk to a member of the minority who love the idea of being flexible, loving, laid back, egalitarian, lucid, cooperative, and kind, then you'll be more inclined to the idea that the highest effort is effortless effort. In fact, the more we meditate and practice mindfulness correctly, the more our choices, utterances, and deeds will flow from the effortless effort of love's centered spontaneity. That flow can be meandering. That flow can be enthusiastic, which is reflected in the fact that both the third and the fifth enlightenment factors are energy and tranquility. Some people try to contrive an experience of bliss by doing all sorts of rituals and visualizations and yogas, and you can create a analog of bliss. You can create a contrivance of bliss. But that's nothing compared to, that does not hold a candle to the splendor of the bliss that is spontaneous and uncontrived. And this is illustrated quite well in Groundhog's Day, which came out way back in the 93, if I remember correctly. There was this scene, a series of scenes in Groundhog's Day. Spoiler alert. Well, Bill Murray is trying to use his time traveling to woo this rather attractive young woman. And he's stuck in a time loop, and he's able to go on hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of dates with her until he knows everything about her mind and emotions and memory and preferences, and he's able to kind of weasel his way into a contrivance of rapport. But after a while, on a visceral level, she's kind of able to feel played by him. And she violently rejects him. And towards the end of the movie, he forsakes the path of contrivance and just flows from centered spontaneity. And even though he's reliving the same day over and over again, he's doing his best to dance with it wisely and lovingly. And that helps him to evolve. And then eventually he evolves sufficiently to escape, not only to escape the, what's it called? It starts with an M, the limbo of his time loop, but the limbo of his, the indifference of the woman of his dreams. Once he becomes who he was meant to be, she can't help but be attracted to him. And the attraction they experience from centered spontaneity is like compared to the analog of attraction they experience through contrivance manipulation, is like comparing a dim, guttering tea light to the glory of the sun at high noon. Let's meditate. Please chant with me. The true condition cannot be grasped conceptually, but appears in varied ways according to how one views it. To strive for bliss, desiring it to manifest, only generates obscuration and confusion. So the magic word here is strive. So we're traversing not the active path, but the passive path. The irony is that it's the passive path that's sudden. So I think it could be kind of good if I go over here and I grab this image and I copy it. And then I come over, oopsie. And then I come over here and I strive to paste it. Oops, wrong one. Let's try that again. Let's hit paste. And now I'm going to hit wrap text behind. So I think it would work better if I moved this over here. Whoops, let's push this back. Okay. So, I've gone through that hullabaloo to remind us that the idea of striving conceptually is striving from our prefrontal cortex. Our prefrontal cortex is an excellent tool, but a terrible boss. Let's continue meditating. If you've just joined me, welcome aboard. Here's a quick synopsis. As we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we could notice the antics of mind, perceiving, emoting, intending, reasoning, recalling, and imagining. However, as we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, we can relax into mind's non-graspable nature. Welcome to the final quarter of this morning's practice. Please join me in chanting. Meditating on the appearances of a deity. Whoops, forgot to add a chanting accent. Come on, coordination, don't fail me now. And let's add pictures, and let's go to, I'm going to fetch a picture right now to put in the corner that I feel would be appropriate for the context. That is on. There we go. All right. Meditating on the appearances of a deity is like meditating on the reflections of the moon and water. Although such meditators strive to be undefiled and unattached to practices or like child's play. Now, as a true geek, eventually I should put an image of Chucky right there. So, when it comes to Tantra, there are three classes of highest yoga Tantra. Mahayoga, Anu Yoga, and Anti Yoga. Mahayoga is the yoga of visualizations. Anu Yoga is the yoga of channels, winds, and drops. Anti Yoga is the yoga of awareness and release. And I will be right back. Thank you for your patience. So, the author of this text, which is the foundation text of Ati Yoga, or Dzogchen, or Mahasandhi, or Sutra Mahamudra, one of the theses of this text is that Anu Yoga, contriving bliss, and Maha Yoga, working with visualizations, does more harm than good. And rather than forcing ourselves to contemplate how our circumstances are appearing yet void, how our bodies are sensual yet void, how our relationships are resounding yet void, how our minds are lucid yet void, rather than forcing ourselves to practice the analog of compassion that forces itself to wish that all circumstances be as fortunate as a real or imagined Buddha's paradise, all bodies be as healthy as a real or imagined Yadam, all relationships be as loving as a Buddha's real or imagined mantra, all minds be as wise as a Buddha's real or imagined mind, symbolized by a one-syllable mantra. All these things are contrivances. And according to the author of this text, the founder of Dzogchen, to persist with Hatha Yoga, to persist with spontaneous awareness and release, is the quick path to sudden enlightenment. It's funny because this was written at about the same time, at a great distance. So this is written in the Swat Valley of contemporary Afghanistan or Pakistan, I'm not sure, somewhere between the two, about the 6th century CE. At the same time, the Song of Enlightenment was written in mainland China, very far away, but as the crow flies at that time, which has similar themes. And I once spoke to Brian Tracy, or I once heard a lecture by Brian Tracy, and he said that according to Jungian psychology, that when an idea is ready, it will come. The only variable is which conduit it'll come through. And I find it really interesting and actually really, really encouraging that the same idea came across at the same time in different places with different cultures and different languages, but the same idea came through. I think some people, I might be wrong, but I think that's referred to as synchronicity, or I think the Catholics would refer to it as serendipity, but it's pretty cool. So let's chant. Meditating on the appearances of a deity is like meditating on the reflections of the moon and water. Although such meditators strive to be undefiled and unattached, their practices are like child's play. I think it's easier to chant if I break that up. But that's for a future project. Let's get on with meditation, shall we? This is the final meditation of the morning, so let's make it count. And if you've just tuned in, allow me to give you a quick synopsis. As we silently, mentally, and passively recite the demonstrative pronoun this during our inhalation, we can kick back and watch the antics of mind as it perceives, emotes, intends, reasons, recalls, and imagines. As we silently, mentally, and passively recite the one-syllable verb ease during our exhalation, we can find ourselves or our sense of self relaxing into mind's non-graspable nature. If you feel that I have earned it, you could give this live stream a thumbs up. You could even help support this channel. In approximately 6 hours or so, I would very much like to lead this afternoon's group practice. And in approximately 2 hours, I would like to lead us, the TikTok group, in bowing and sitting. And if you are as geeky as me, may the Force be with you always.